But if you're thinking about it, you should just do it.
You know what? Once you do sort of two, three of them, you're like, God, that was awful. Then you kind of just start laughing about it.
Your video production will improve. You just need to start. And the sooner you start, the sooner you'll come across the lessons that every content creator learns.
Don't underestimate the skills you learn from medical school.
Welcome, guys, to the More Than Medics podcast. Today we have Yosha and Tristan, both medical students who content creation in the MedTech sort of sphere. Lovely to meet you guys and lovely to have you on. So nice to speak to co-founders as well, Yasmin and I. So this is the first time we spoke to two co-founders who are med students as well. So really lovely. If you could both just, I guess, give a little introduction as to yourselves and what you're up to.
Yeah, so lovely to meet both of you as well. Thanks, Yasmin, for reaching out. My name is Yosha. I am a medical student and I'm intercalating this year in a master's in medtech, entrepreneurship, and innovation. I also am co-founder of Orbion, and I create a little bit of content on the side, just basically documenting my journey and the kind of lessons I've learned. And so far, I mean, I'm not, everybody asks me like, what do you want to specialize in? I'm not completely sure on that yet, but I am definitely interested in business, in med tech, and I think maybe I've just ruled out some specialties so far, but I do still definitely want to be a medic, and that's just a little bit of insight into me.
Nice.
Yeah, nice to meet you guys, and thank you for inviting me on. My name is Tristan. I am a fourth year medical student at Barton in London, and I'm also the co-founder of Orbion. On top of that, I do a lot of sort of work within the medtech space. So I facilitate sort of collaborations internationally between medtech organizations to try and facilitate some spaces where innovation can happen and collaboration between these student organizations. So that's in America and Copenhagen and here in London. Um, and yeah, sort of similar to Yosha, I definitely haven't ruled out clinical medicine. Still quite interested in doing surgery, but I'm very keen to explore the possibility of running a business alongside becoming a doctor as well. I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, lovely. So tell us how did it all start then? How did you two meet, obviously at different unis, and then the vision behind Orbion?
Yeah, definitely. I think I can start with how we met, and then Tristan, if you want to speak a bit about Orbion specifically.
Mhm.
So, Tristan and I, obviously being medical students in London, we're very privileged to have this sort of inter-university network where they host a lot of conferences and collaboration with one another. I know one of the key conferences that I remember was held at Barts in London, and it was the Innovation Conference, specialized towards medtech. So yeah, we just know each other from mutuals and from being in a similar space.
Mm. And I suppose our sort of shared passion for medtech kind of brought us together, and we decided to just one day, um, in a over some coffee, just we decided to start Orbion. It was a process of sort of trying to figure out, okay, what are we good at, and what is there kind of a need for in this space at the moment. So Yosha obviously draws upon her sort of social media experience, and I draw upon sort of quite an extensive background in video production, and sort of those two combined means that we can produce some really high quality content for our clients. We also do other sort of services like website development and more sort of demo videos um, to attract investors. Um, but sort of at the moment, we're also very early stage. You know, we've only been going for sort of 6, 7 months now, and so we're still sort of exploring where we can possibly pivot. And sort of, I'm having conversations. Well, we're both having conversations with lots of founders, lots of investors, and all this kind of stuff to try and figure out where are the pain points in this journey for a medtech startup, and where can we develop a solution to try and fix that. And yeah, I think have I missed anything, Yosha?
No, I think you summarized it pretty well. The fact that we're quite a young company allows us to be a bit broader with our services at the minute. So I know we're quite interested in business strategy as well and helping clients out with that. But I guess, one of my most memorable projects so far was helping out at the Copenhagen MedTech Innovation Summit, where we helped a little bit with the conference organization as well as building up a little bit of hype as well for the conference. And that was really nice because it was the first opportunity where I could really travel for work. And I learned a lot just by being, we always are attending MedTech conferences in London, but to have a diverse community abroad where you can share insights with them too, that was quite eye-opening too.
was actually going to ask what was your most memorable project you've done.
Great minds.
That seems so cool that you get to also travel out for
Mm.
these projects. I wanted to ask, what actually got you guys into MedTech in the first place? So what actually kind of inspired that interest in MedTech and business?
I think personally, since I started my clinical placements in year three, I sort of kept seeing all these things in the hospital where I just thought this can be done better. And it was actually just quite frustrating to see. And I'm still seeing more and more now where I just constantly think, a software here, a little product here, something to just streamline some of these workflows, whether that's for the clinicians or for the patients, would just make a hospital so much more efficient, and save costs and everything, which is all sort of medtech is about. And I suppose the NHS is at a point where they don't really have much more money and the staffing is an issue. And so really tech is the only thing that's going to revolutionize the NHS to try and um, bring it back to life in that way. But yeah, I think that's my reasoning. And I quite like tech. I find it quite cool. It's interesting. I think it's exciting to see all the innovation that happens in this space and the great ideas that people come up with to solve sort of what to some seems like a very small problem, but to that population of patients is hugely important.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask. So you both came together. Um, you have the maybe more experience in social media, and then you video production, as you said. You have this idea of how you can maybe streamline um, sort of how companies portray themselves on social media and make it uh, better for the customers and more intuitive for them. Uh, how what do you do then? Because obviously, like maybe you don't have as much of an experience in business. I don't know, maybe you do. But like, what was the game plan at that point?
I think one of the attitudes I have, especially towards building a skill set, is definitely to learn as quick as possible and not to get caught up in defining every little step and more so just start. I know me and Tristan talk a lot about sort of trying out lots of things, failing, learning from them, reiterating our approach towards the services we offer. So we did have quite an extensive portfolio prior to starting the company with working with high-end clients, helping with media production as well. So I think we kind of leveraged that and produced services that we knew that we could deliver well on. That's
Hmm.
probably how it started, I'd say.
Nice. Is it possible to actually see a video on the podcast?
Yeah, I
I,
don't
I I
know.
just, I just, I'm just genuinely interested. Just it'd be cool to see.
Yeah, I think we have the Copenhagen one, right?
Yeah, I can pull that up.
I think it's very important that we increase the knowledge about medtech in the healthcare sector involved in developing new medical devices and in innovation. You get the perspective of what is possible when you are also engaged in developing medtech and where the limitations are.
Copenhagen MedTech, it's an organization of voluntary students facilitating the collaboration between students and stakeholders.
And I learn a lot of different things. Stay curious and come speak with us, of course, because we're just as curious as you.
Just to have a great doorway into the world of medtech, see how wonderful it can be. I'm really glad to be able to be a part of something that will help people in the future, either if it's from some kind of things that doctors need to use or something that might help patients in their daily life just to make it easier.
That's amazing.
So did you do everything about in that, like taking the videos, the planning of all those clips? What's the sort of the process?
So we've got a really talented team of videographers and editors. So essentially how that video specifically worked was we flew over our videographer as well, with all his kit. And then sort of it was probably the longest working day I've ever done. We started at sort of 7 in the morning, and we just continually filmed the event, obviously, but Yosh and I were interviewing the people. asking them about the event and what they were trying to do in MedTech and trying to get an understanding of that. And sort of those little snippets of the people talking are sort of the result of that. Yeah, so it was a long day and we finished at, I don't know, 10 o'clock or something in the evening, after everyone had left. And it was really good. It was nice. It's nice. It didn't feel like
Mm.
that long. And then, yeah, sort of after that, we sent it off to our video editor and she produced that. Um,
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah,
So how many people in the team then? So
in
in
Orbion,
yeah.
we have got Yosha and we just brought on an intern recently, which is very exciting. So he's learning to do some of the sales for us. It's going really great. I think sort of for Yoshi and I to take on a bit more of a coaching role is quite exciting and sort of pushes us a bit more to sort of offload some of the knowledge that we have. So we're helping him. And then sort of beyond that, we've got sort of several teams of web developers, editors, videographers, that kind of thing. I don't know. I don't even know. Probably 12 people in
Oh,
total.
wow. Big
Um,
team. Wow.
yeah,
That's really cool. Go on.
about that. Yeah.
And in terms of like kind of having such a big team, what are the key learnings that you've learned from crafting that team together to ensure that you have the max impact?
Mm.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. One thing is, it sounds very cliche, but just communication, making sure we have channels, and we also are very clear on our boundaries in terms of what work hours look like, where we can be reached the most, the easiest. And I think when you're communicative with your team, it definitely shows in, I guess, the work ethic and also their understanding of how to approach certain tasks. Also, managing a team in a way, though it seems like a lot of work, I also think they've been so useful in helping us delegate a lot easier and take some of the responsibilities, push them towards other things that are calling our attention, such as scaling and expanding. So that's some of my key learnings. I'm not sure about you, Tristan.
Yeah, I think I've got a few points. I think firstly, when we're looking to take someone on board and use someone in the team, um, one of the main things Yoshi and I look for is sort of proactivity and that sort of quite particular mindset of I'll ask them to do something and they'll sort of just they'll find a way of doing it themselves without having to ask me or Yosha 100 questions, and sort of being able to work things out for themselves. Obviously, we're both there if they need, but it's more sort of um, they're quite independent, which helps a lot and takes a lot off our plate, which is great. So that's one thing. And then I was actually having an interesting conversation with an investor the other day who was talking about how he bases all his investments off vibes from the person, which is quite funny. Um, and you can laugh about it, but really, I think often Yosh and I, like when we were talking to the intern, you know, afterwards when he left, we were sort of sat there like, okay, well, apart from his skill set and what he can do and etc., do we genuinely get on with this person? And do we trust him and that kind of thing? And I think if the answer is yes to a lot of those questions, then you can be quite confident that that person will fit in well to the team.
I think that's really useful. And actually, I wanted to ask about your kind of co-founder relationship. Um, have you experienced any challenges or adjustments that you've had to make, like for example, about boundaries, working together? How's that been for you?
Yosha, keen to hear your opinion.
I think honestly, a co-founder relationship is unlike any other kind of business or work relationship that you've had before. It's literally like we have to share so much of obviously what happens in the business. We obviously have to spend a lot of time with each other, and that means you really should like your co-founder. And it also means that because you are spending that much time together, it can highlight sort of some of the strengths that one person has or some of the improvements the other person needs to make. So I think with our dynamic, I actually find it really balanced. I think though we are in very similar spaces with medicine and medtech, I find that our soft skills and some of our sort of even some of our other skill sets, they they balance each other out. So I would say I don't know, I think Tristan's actually the best judge on this, but maybe when it comes to sort of front-facing roles or directing sort of client relationships, I think I feel more comfortable taking charge of those. But Tristan also does as well, to be honest. But I think with his skill set, he is able to manage some of the things that I really struggle with as well, sort of including a lot of the behind the scene technicals of how our business runs. What do you think, Tristan? Is that live up
Yeah, I agree. I think we sort of pick up where each other sort of lack a little bit. So one of the things we always laugh about is I'm really blunt over text, like just awful. I can't. I don't know what to do.
I think I'm the same. I think I'm the
Yeah,
same.
you're reflecting the same relationship here.
And so we have this thing where whenever if I need to send a message to someone and perhaps it needs to be slightly strong worded, but I don't want to come across rude or whatever, and etc. etc. I'll write the message and then I'll pass the phone to Yosha and she'll just sit and make it nice. I don't come across as a horrible person. So yeah, that's just an example. But we yeah, I think we complement each other quite well. In terms of challenges, I don't think there's been any sort of disputes yet, really, which is great, obviously. And I think we have sort of from the start when we founded Orbion, we actually spent quite a lot of time just talking about some of our I don't know what the word for it is, like our morals or how we want to run the business. A lot of that was to do with sort of how we want to engage with our the people who work for us, how we want to run the company, how we want to deal with clients, that kind of thing. And I think having those conversations initially was probably what set the foundation for like a really healthy co-founder relationship, in that often the decisions we make we agree on because of those initial conversations. Does that make
Yeah.
any sense?
No, no, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're similar in that way. It's like you do really have to get like what me, Yasmin and I are very, very close friends outside of more than medics. Um, and we know each other very well. So like I don't know. We have boundaries, obviously, but it's like I can call Yaz at any time, and we can have a chat about something urgent or non-urgent, whatever it is. It's sort of quite chill. It's quite a nice relationship, and well, I was going to say complementation, but I don't think that's a word. I think we complement each other quite well as well. What would you say? Yaz is the more creative, visionary type person, and then I'm more like I'm going to try and poke holes in all your arguments and sort of try and make sure that it's sort of uh, foolproof what we're doing and everything we do. What would you say, as?
Yeah, 100%. I think like the way you were describing your relationship just reminded me about our kind of co-founder relationship. And I think it's important. I think the thing that you highlighted is the difference in skill sets is really important and making sure it's complementary, because even research has shown like having a diverse team, for example, will ensure then you're making more effective decisions. It then brings out different skill sets within the team. You don't want everyone to be the same type of person, and that's the same in that kind of co-founder relationship. And I think also what's really important is the idea of like, yeah, morals, kind of making sure your values are the same and at least aligned, so as you go forward you'll say yes to the same decisions because you're basing it on those morals and values that you've kind of set from the foundation, which I think is really key in a co-founder relationship. So that's really useful. And then I
I
kind of,
wonder.
oh yeah, go on.
Sorry. No, I just had a question. How did you guys find that switch from sort of being very close friends to then going into more sort of a business relationship?
Oh, that's a good question.
It's a really,
Um, so we met doing we were put in the same group by chance to do our entrepreneurship module, which is where we created the precursor to More Than Medics. So I think actually our first, obviously I met her before and got on, like with anyone else, I guess, in the year. Maybe a bit more for you, Yasmin, maybe. But I think initially, maybe actually, it was a more work-oriented relationship. And then as you work, obviously, you get to know each other very well. I think it's a really good way to get to know someone. Um, so I think we're good mates and business partners at the same time. And I think people say that sometimes that can be a problem, but it hasn't been a problem for us yet.
Knowing the boundaries, as Martin said, we kind of like were friends at the beginning, but we became very close when we got put into the work environment. And I guess when you're in a work environment, that kind of showcases a lot of your personality at that point. And because we realized through that work environment, through working on the different projects, we had a very similar working style. It complemented each other very well. Um, I think that kind of set a really good foundation for the business kind of working relationship we would have.
Yeah.
And then, like as Martin said, as you work, the all-nighters, for example, on projects that trauma bonding to some extent does kind of help develop that friendship and you get to know each other really well. But I think what's also nice is that we kind of have that boundary. Like, although we obviously work all the time with each other, we kind of know when we need to like switch off and just not talk about more the medics or business work. And then we know when we need to kind of lock in and put our business caps on, in a sense. But I do think it's very weird, kind of the balance, like navigating it out, I think. What about you guys? How have you found that balance?
I I actually think it's quite difficult in terms of, sometimes we'll have like a 2 hour meeting and then at the end I'll be like, how are you doing? Like I haven't even like had a normal conversation with Yosha. I was like, what are we doing this weekend? Like I just
Do you
completely
do you
sometimes.
separate business chat from friendship chat? Or is it just a conversation that work happens and you're like, oh, how are you? Or but by the sounds of it, maybe not.
Probably need to do that more, just sort of integrating it a bit more. I feel like
I don't know.
sometimes
Do you know what?
we
I think one thing that I made sure that we do, even if it's like a business chat, is I always make sure we ask how we're doing. Um, just to get like Martin will know this. That's why he's laughing. Like I'll always, even if we need to discuss something urgent from all the medics, I'll be like, okay, but how are you doing? Like, tell me about your day. Just because I think sometimes we can get so caught up in our work, in the urgent task that needs doing. And also we kind of just forget that ultimately at the end of the day, like we have a relationship in a sense, whether it's a work relationship, a friendship, etc. And I think just that checking up on each other kind of puts you back into reality of like who like you're both just human beings just working on this project,
Yeah.
and it kind of ensures that you're looking after each other at the same time.
I
Which
think I think it can also go the other way though, but I've experienced this as well. Like we're just sort of having a chat, but we're also working, but then we go back to having a chat and then we do a bit more. It gets very diluted and then we end up not being efficient at all. So I think it's finding the balance. Yeah.
yeah.
Was just gonna add to that. I think Tristan and I are weirdly very efficient. Like I think we're like we always lock in,
Oh,
and
good.
it does mean no, but what it means is it's because we don't have all that. We don't have as much friendship chat maybe as we should. I remember we were literally doing the Copenhagen project, and one day I was like, "Well, I don't actually know so much about you," and we just had to sit and like have a conversation, which is nice. It's improving as time goes along, but I completely agree, Yasmin, with what you were saying. No matter what's going on, I think we do ask each other sort of, how are you doing? I might pop in the question of like, tell me your three gratefuls right now, just to make sure that everything's
Yasmin does that to me, yeah.
yeah.
Does it
Um,
to me. Yeah.
no, honestly, and I think that's how we operate, but it's definitely, yeah, I think we're improving, hopefully, as time goes on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think we're still trying to find that balance. I'm very much a yapper, so sometimes like halfway through our work, I'll just start yapping about a certain thing, and Martin used to tell me to look back in. But it's definitely something to it's an interesting kind of relationship to manage, I think, which doesn't really get talked about a lot.
Yeah.
Conversations when you talk about co-founders. And I want to ask, in terms of Orbion, what other kind of challenges have you maybe experienced setting it up, especially as med students, balancing your medical degrees or masters at the moment with running a whole company?
I think one of the initial challenges we uh, bumped into in terms of this is more focused on sort of the services that we provide in Orbion as a business. Then maybe Yoshi can talk a bit about sort of balancing. So initially we wanted to become sort of a more consultancy, helping medtech startups through this journey to commercialization. And what we found through sort of conversations with these startups is that it's a difficult service to provide when you're young and you don't have that experience. And we haven't had our own medtech startups yet. And so that was kind of we hit a bit of a wall there, and we were like, oh damn, we were really excited to do it, and then we kind of had to pivot at that point, back to doing more sort of video production and stuff that's a bit more of an easy access. And I think just sort of more generally, just to people who want to start a business at this age, it's like you need to think about sort of what are your strong suits and what from your your ICP, your ideal customer persona, like what is when they look at you, what do they think that you have that they don't? And in our case, we have quite a good understanding of social media, video production, this kind of stuff, and website building, and so we can kind of take that experience and help them with that. But yeah, in terms of the balancing, it's difficult, but I'll let Yosha talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, I would add to that that some of the initial challenges that you face is definitely fitting in time for your startup around every other commitment. I think unlike most clock in, clock out, 9 to 5 jobs, you guys are probably very familiar. There is no closing shop time for startups. It's like if there is an urgent project and our turnaround, like for one of our recent ones, was literally 3 days and we already had lots of meetings booked, or let's say university commitments, it can be challenging to prioritize where we need to put our focus. But I think, again, one thing that's really helped, especially with us, I would say, is being honest and straight up upfront about this is when I will be available. It's getting a bit too much for me. Could we share the workload here? One thing that Tristan and I speak about as well is when is his exam seasons, when are mine, so that we can shuffle around our work. So that's helped us balance a little bit better.
Yeah. No, I I had a progress test this Monday, and I have clinical exams on Friday. So this week's been intense, and then last week I had something else. So Yasmin's been taking the slack for me for sure, which is really nice. It's just really quite powerful actually, just having a co-founder as well. Um, I think maybe you forget, like I forget sometimes, take it for granted, but it's such a special thing to have someone else help you and have a shoulder to sort of lie on and someone to sort of bounce ideas off of. And for anyone like watching who, you know, it is scary actually to start a business and but doing it by yourself, like it was scary for us too, and I'm sure you can relate. But doing it by yourself is like, well, I can't really imagine. Um, so I will say it's just like, yeah, having if there is a co-founder potential in mind, reach out to them, do some work with them. I think that's a really important thing. Like, see how they are in that working environment, how you guys like do a project together or do some sort of task and sort of test each other, see how you work together, because that's so important. Because I've heard of co-founders who get on well maybe in as a friends, but when it comes to work, something just doesn't quite click. Um, and so yeah, I don't know how I got onto this. But no, I just wanted to reflect. Like, it's really nice having a co-founder. It's lovely.
Yeah, and I'd like to add on to your point, Martin, that sort of having a co-founder, especially when you're young and especially when you've got other commitments, we've
Yeah.
spoken about that, but sort of starting a business, there's so much uncertainty. And like we spoke about earlier, a lot of the time you're kind of figuring it out as you go along. And I think sometimes having just someone to like bounce ideas off, or just to be like, I'm thinking of doing this. Do you think that's a good idea? And then just going, yes, or no, maybe you should go about it like this. It's just like really just gives you a bit more confidence. It gives you that tiny bit more confidence to actually go ahead and do that thing. So yeah, I think definitely for those listening, like try and find a co-founder. It really helps with balancing the work, but also just that whole uncertainty in starting a business.
And I wanted to ask, what are your key reflections from starting off Orbion? Like, if you had to restart all again, what would you do differently, if anything?
That's a really deep question. Let me think.
Sorry, it's a bit challenging, but
How about, are you guys able to go first while we think?
oh,
I'd love to hear your thoughts on
Yeah.
it too.
Wait, so what was the question? What would we change if
what
we were
would
to
you
go back?
say?
You know what? It is hard.
I think I have I have one thing I'd say. I think if we had to do something differently, it would be when we make big decisions to sleep on it. We are both very excitable people. Like we get very excited, obviously, because more than medics, it's like you guys, it's a passion project. And it's like your little baby. And when exciting updates or decisions come, sometimes probably more myself, I'd say, I get very excited and I'm like, yes, let's do it. But actually, on reflection, I think it's always better to kind of sleep on it, think about it, process it, and then really reflect. Okay, is this decision going to add value? Is this the best decision to make at this point in time? And I think that's something that I would probably do, maybe more for a reflection on myself, but I would do differently if I had to start again. So I would say that's one for more than medics.
It seems like it's gone very, very swimmingly and perfect for you guys. This is good to hear. The silence is good.
No, I think we've been very lucky in that we've had some great people around us. Both Yosh and I have quite good networks of people in different fields. And so, really, whenever there's been any sort of issue or uncertainty, we've always had people we can um, go to ask these questions, people who've been through the exact same process. Like I mentioned earlier, I spend a lot of my time just speaking to other founders, speaking to these
Mm,
people who've been through this whole process already. And so really nurturing those relationships means that I feel, I don't know, I'm sure there's things we could have done better, but there's nothing that sort of like
yeah,
springs to mind instantly.
yeah,
Um, I think if anything, then I mean, one of the things Yoshi and I have spoken about is we really want to sort of move towards creating some software and that kind of thing. And you know, you could argue that you could perhaps, if to start again, we would start by just focusing on finding a pain point and not wasting our time on delivering services. But on the flip side of that is that I think we're sort of learning a lot just by serving clients, working with them, understanding what their pain points are as well, and sort of really getting an understanding of the whole medtech sphere in general.
mm,
So that was the only thing that I could really think about, but
yeah,
I don't regret what we've done. It's just a different way of doing it.
Yeah, I think the question almost implies that something didn't end up serving for your benefit.
yeah,
And when I think about it retrospectively, even things that we were like, oh, like, why did this happen? Or this probably shouldn't have happened the way it did, or we could have been more efficient. At the end, it's taught us something more valuable than if we had just done it the right way in the first place. So for me, it's nice to think that everything that happened, we still had some sort of benefit from it in some way or another. And even some things, some of the things I feel like we're still yet to see how well it will serve us in future.
yeah.
Yeah.
You both touched on like networking and how that Tristan especially like how you talking to different founders. How does one how does one start to build a network and start talking to so many people that are in a similar sort of position?
What I'll tell you what I did,
Yeah.
and I think it's worked fairly well. So this time last year, I had zero connections on LinkedIn. I didn't really use it, barely really knew what it was for. And then um, I just decided to kind of start getting a bit of momentum under it. I was barely even posting. I just started by literally going on the sort of suggested connections, whatever, and just adding everyone from my university. Because as soon as they see, oh, he's also Bart's in London, yeah, okay, connection. So instantly I was getting a lot of sort of connections through that. And perhaps that's not the best way to do it, but it meant that I could take my page from having zero connections to sort of growing that. And then I think attending networking events, just like making an effort to. So my focus has always been on my LinkedIn and trying to like grow that. And I'm still doing that at the moment. And so sort of when you go to these networking events, have a chat with someone and then don't forget to like get their LinkedIn so you can, keep up with them and see what they're doing and reach out to them in the future. Um, so yeah, I did that quite sort of rigorously, continually sent out invites and everything. And then suddenly you get to a point where you actually got quite an established LinkedIn. And then at this point, when you then reach out to a founder, a CEO, an investor, someone you want to talk to, they go on your page and they realize that, okay, this person is serious. He's serious about what he's doing. He's got a bunch of posts on there talking about medtech, talking about his interests and his business and what he's trying to build. And most of the time, these people have been in our position a few years ago. And so they really recognize the value of helping sort of younger people. And so, a lot of them say to me at the end, they're like, oh, one of my things is I just really want to help younger people trying to build businesses. And so they're very happy to sort of give you the 25 of their time to sort of teach you a little bit about business and coach you a little bit through things. So that's what I did, I think, in a nutshell. I think it's worked quite well. Um, yeah, I don't know if I've missed anything, but yeah, just like I put a lot of emphasis into LinkedIn from the start, and I think it's sort of paid off.
Yeah. Now, just to follow on from that, I think people are a lot more, as you say, like receptive to talking to you on LinkedIn than you might think. Um, I think the culture in this country is very standoffish. We're British ultimately, but I don't know. On LinkedIn, you're reaching out to people. Obviously, you're showing that you're interested via your posts and things, but ultimately, people are willing to help. As you say, people have probably been in our positions or similar positions when they were getting started. So I think for people listening, yeah, like honestly, people are much more receptive to having a chat with you, even if they maybe seem a bit too high and mighty. Ultimately, they were in our position maybe only a few years ago. So yeah,
Yeah.
no,
And I was just going to add to that that the strategies that Tristan and I adopt to building our network are quite different, I'd say. And that's something I'm learning from Tristan more how to be a bit more proactive in reaching out and who to reach out to. I would say what my predominant way of building my network has been to publish content. And I think through that, I've had a lot of interest in sort of what is Orbion, what do you do? I think content creation, it seems like everybody is doing it now, and it's great because that's the kind of era that we're in. That's how you attract a lot of traction on in your business or on your personal brand pages. And for me, that's been quite fruitful with my pages on Instagram and TikTok. And also what I've started doing is repurposing some of the content that I've posted on my social media platforms to LinkedIn, obviously the more professional sort of content. And you would think that people on LinkedIn are used to more written forms of text, but it seems that they've taken quite well to videos as well. And it's just shown, I think, when you see someone's kind of day in the life, maybe it shows that not only what they're doing is super achievable for you to do as well, it does take away a little bit of that wall that is built up through social media and through a high and mighty platform like LinkedIn as well.
No, 100%. And I think what's really nice about video content is that it just makes it more personable. Like I've seen some of your content because I was following you for a while, and I was like, it just provides more personality to the written posts sometimes that we always see on LinkedIn. And I think also what's nice again, like your different styles will attract different, for example, clients will attract different networks, which will be equally beneficial for Orbion then, ultimately having those different styles. So actually, they're very complementary towards each other. And I wanted to ask, what are your top tips for kind of content creation?
I'll
I
let
think
you answer this one.
no, I think the first, I don't know if this is a tip, but if you're thinking about it, you should just do it. I don't think there should be any barriers. And one of the biggest barriers that people have is what will people think of me? Is my content good enough? Am I embarrassing? I don't like hearing the sound of my own voice. I had all of these concerns when I first started. In fact, my personal brand pages were more targeted towards sort of offering tuitions for students who wanted to get into medical school, because that's the background that I guess I knew the most about. That was a skill that I thought I was pretty good at. And of course, I still do that, but now I've transitioned into more of a personable sort of day in the life-esque, lifestyle-esque videos. And my tip is if you're not comfortable with editing, it's fine. You will learn, you will pick it up. My first videos, I there was like no cuts between them. It was like one long just thing of me speaking. And over time, I've learned how to add overlays. I've learned how to play around with audio a little bit and improve the quality of my videos. So your video production will improve. You just need to start. And the sooner you start, the sooner you'll come across the lessons that every content creator learns. I still think obviously I have a long way to go and I would like to experiment with longer form content. I think that's the next step for me. some other tips. Let me think. I guess something I wish I knew before I started, and I don't think it's discussed very often, is the guilt that you'll feel if you don't post. It does become a little bit like, oh my gosh, if I don't post for 2 days, I'm losing everybody. No one's gonna like my content anymore. People are gonna think I'm an inconsistent, video content creator. And especially when you have so much else on your plate, it's really, really helpful to bulk film in advance. If you know there's a day you're going out to a conference or a day you're dressed up pretty nice, just carry your tripod, carry your camera, bulk film a lot of content, and it will save you a lot of time and a lot of that guilt later on that, oh, I don't have anything to post, I don't have time to edit.
Love that. Martin, take notes for our I've been wanting to like work on our TikTok and make it more engaging, but I've been trying to convince Martin to get on it. So Martin, I hope you're listening.
How, when you guys do the TikToks, are you both like you both loving it? Are you all for it, Tristan? You're like, are you, yeah, yeah. I thought so. I think you're the
So
same.
let me tell you about this. So I think when you go on our social media, there's a distinct difference between the ones that I make and the ones that Yosha makes. Um, and yes, Martin, I'm not the biggest fan
No, he loves it. He
of
loves
lip
it.
syncing and
I'm sure he
everything.
does.
But
I'm sure he
you
does.
know what? Once you do sort of two, three of them, you're like, God, that was awful. Then you kind of just start laughing about it. And I wanted to touch on the point about sort of Yosha mentioned, oh, what will people think and stuff. And I remember sort of quite clearly there was this one point we're having a meeting in a cafe, and we were like, oh, let's just film some videos, get the like Instagram and TikTok going. And I was like, what, really? What, all these people sitting around? No way, I'm not doing this. And in my mind, I was like, God, why is she making me do this? So embarrassing. And then, we put up the tripod and the lights and everything and started filming. And honestly, no one turned around, no one cared. And so, and then sort of since that, it was quite like a turning point for me. I just don't really care anymore. I realized that no one even bats an eyelid at it anymore. And so yeah, yeah, I do enjoy it now, but at the start it was difficult for sure.
I'm really glad you said that, Tristan. I'm really glad. That's really good. But also it is a real thing. Like I think even like you both said, when you're doing content creation, a lot of the times we think about judgments, we think about what will people think. But ultimately at the end of the day, when you're filming it, no one really cares around you. And you're providing some sort of value, whether it's awareness of your company, for example, awareness of the things you do. Ultimately, there'll be a benefit at the end of the day. So it's kind
Yeah.
of
I think
those barriers that you put down.
yeah, a lot like there's another thing like a lot of medics. I think they don't do it. Maybe like they want to. Like I can see them like budding content creators, and they want to, but they feel like yeah, there'll be some sort of judgment because maybe it's like not useful or not valuable. But ultimately, like it is, it's a bit of humor, a bit of relatefulness, maybe in something that medics do that maybe other people don't. That's value. It's maybe not, scientific or providing like care or management, but it's like a different form of value. And I think maybe we don't see that sometimes and dismiss, uh, you know, becoming a content creator, making a little video.
Yeah, and in the vein of judgment, I've been very fortunate so far that a lot of my community are quite wholesome. Even people, new followers that come across my videos, I don't really get hate per se, praise God for now.
Mhm.
But what I will say is people who have made judgy comments or who have made sort of unsolicited comments about my content creation, I've never wanted to have their life or to have their attitudes towards work or to, they've never been someone that I've thought, oh my gosh, your opinion actually should really be valuable for me. And most of the time, the people who have the most to say don't have social media themselves, they don't know how to create a video. And that's where it's a thing of, I'm not doing it for them anyways. I'm doing it for people who really like what I produce and find value in what I produce.
Yeah, I guess it's just like having a bit of a having a bit of a tough skin to that sort of attention, that unwanted attention, sort of, you know, um, yeah, ignore it essentially.
Yeah, yeah. So I just wanted to ask, where do you see Orbion in the next couple of years? What's the future vision?
I am very excited for the next few years. I think we've moved so quickly in the first 6, 7 months of sort of being around, being established. And I think we just want to carry on that momentum and not let that die down. I think we are trying to hone in exactly on our service or our sort of pain point that we're trying to solve. That's what we're working quite hard on at the moment, whilst sort of also delivering for our current clients and getting some new clients on board as well. And then yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we want to find that pain point and sort of try and develop a software or something and move towards that. Mostly because I'm acutely aware of the fact that we'll both be graduating in a few years, and if our business is solely reliant on our time and the effort that we put into it, then once we start working F1, F2, etc., the business is going to sort of take a bit of a hit. And so I want to move towards a business model that I can remove myself from more, if that makes sense. Yeah. What about you, Yosha?
Yeah, I think we speak about this often, and I'm quite removed from questions, even goal-based questions like where do you see yourself in 5 years, just because I don't ever want to confine what I think I can achieve. If you had told me at the beginning of this year I'd have my own company and we would have hit the milestones that we did, I would have thought it was genuinely impossible for me to achieve. So all I can count on is the feelings that I'm hoping to have about the business in a few years. And I hope for those feelings to be security, feeling like we've established something that people really respect and people value and they can recognize the impact it's having. Also, the feeling of not only being inspirational for other people, but being inspired by people that can coach us, mentors, looking up to people in our space, and constantly elevating our network in that sense, being in rooms that we never imagined Orbion could be in, accepting achievements as well that we didn't think we'd hit. So I think that's the kind of feelings that I'm working towards fostering over the next couple of years. God
Love,
willing.
I love that. I love the idea of like what feelings you want to kind of have when you reach that point, that made it point in a sense.
Oh, what
And I
about
guess
you guys as well? Sorry, I know I interrupted you. What about, I wanted to hear about you guys as well.
Oh,
um,
where do we want to be in 5 years? I guess, look, like I think we mentioned it before. More than medics, we're a non-profit. We really just want to help medics, honestly, like me, a bit selfish in that regard, that are just, I don't know what I want to do in my career. And I think there's a lot of medics that feel that way. In fact, not just medicine, any sort of career. I think that to some extent, everyone's slightly, a little bit unsure of where they want to go next. And I think that's what we want to solve. If you go on more than medics, you know, rest assured you can find something that you're interested in, find a little bit more about it, maybe listen to a podcast, use someone um, who has experience in it, like yourself, maybe for content creation. Um, and if we can get to that sort of stage in 5 years where, um, people like me can just go on more than medics, have a listen, have a look, have a read, have a watch, and ultimately they're a little bit closer to finding something that truly fulfills them, and that leads them to a career that they can really create impact. I think everyone has their sort of thing. And I think if we can help medics around this country find that thing, then that's just that would be amazing. If they could find that thing they really enjoy, they're really passionate about, that they can do loads of work for, but it doesn't actually feel like work. They just love it. I think that would be a really nice thing. But yes, what do you think?
I think, yeah, ultimately being kind of the one-stop shop for if anyone has interests that are kind of outside the norm of clinical medicine, for them to kind of come to us and access our services, what we provide, our offering, value offering. And like Martin said, get that one step closer to having a more fulfilled career. And I guess ultimately impacting somehow the NHS workforce to some extent. Like there's a lot of research at the moment where increased rates of burnout, a lot of people less fulfilled, and research shows that having actually a more diverse career can provide that fulfillment because you're actually actively pursuing your passions. So
Yeah.
ultimately, I'd love that our work is helping out the new generation of doctors and even actually wider healthcare professionals, because you can apply to dentistry and all these other different healthcare positions. But yeah, ultimately helping the new generation of the NHS feel more fulfilled and happier with their work and lifestyles, and just pursuing their passions alongside, and realizing that they don't need to sacrifice one for the other. They can actually kind of redefine their medical career
Yeah.
for them, which suits them. And I guess relating to the feelings aspect that you mentioned, I guess a feeling of like kind of I would like to feel like that sense of um a rewarding feeling in a sense that the value we're creating is actually making an impact, and that kind of satisfaction within me that even the little things like recording this podcast today is somehow helping that one individual out there, at least. So that's something I think I'd like to work towards, just feeling fulfilled in myself actually through this. I'm also getting fulfillment too, so working towards that fulfillment myself.
Wow, that was deep. That was
That was
nice.
quite deep.
That was
That was
nice.
quite
That was really
deep.
nice.
Um, And I had one last question. Okay, one last question. Unless Martin, you had another. But okay, so maybe Yosha, you're probably more aware of this trend since you're a TikTok girly, from what it seems. But there's a trend going around where it's like you write comments about what a coffee conversation you'd have with your younger self. So Yosha knows what I'm on about. So if you had to have a coffee conversation with your younger self, what's one piece of advice you'd give to them?
I low-key wrote this out. I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah, I did just do a video on this, and there's so many things I think I would, and also I feel like I'm quite a reflective person by nature. I've kept a daily journal since I was in year nine. And like I know I just it's I really and like I just love looking back and seeing, just reflecting, not even judging and like that could have gone better, but even just seeing how did I think during that time in my life, what else was going on. Oh my gosh. I think I would say that nothing is too far or too good, too unrealistic for you to achieve. When I was younger, I definitely had quite a few limiting thoughts, perhaps in the environment that I grew up in, especially. I don't, I'm being really careful on how to phrase this, but I know as medics, we are channeled almost slightly in a tunnel vision way towards a very specific career path. Um, and it's almost no one speaks too much about deviating from that path. I know now it's a lot more common, which is so refreshing that you guys have this podcast, because I think it is truly going to open the eyes for so many medics who have, being at that age, doing so well in your studies, having this drive towards caring for people. You are capable of achieving pretty much anything you want, any field you want to go into, you can, and you choose one that is self-sacrificing at the core. And so I would tell myself that, like, you will get to where you want to, you will be happy in where you want, but don't cut yourself off from what is achievable for you, is probably what I would say.
Love that.
Tristan, do you have anything else to add as well?
Yeah, I was sat thinking. I think there's a few things, two things I think I can narrow it down to. So, um, I would say to my younger self, as in the one who started med school, I would say don't underestimate the skills you learn from medical school. They are so powerful. The whole interaction you have with a patient, the way you get information out of them in a kind, respectful way, the way that you can think on your feet and problem solve, um, all these things, that these soft skills and are just so important in running a business, because if you can directly correlate sort of a patient consultation to like a sales call, for example, in that you're trying to work out what's the issue they're facing and what are you hoping that you can do for them. Um, and sort of working with them is not just like a one-way conversation of me talking to them. It's a conversation about, what you can do to help them. I think that's one thing. And then another thing is like, it's actually something a doctor said to me a few years ago. It was that the only difference between, this was in obviously them saying this to me, they were like, oh, the only difference between me and you is that I'm just a few years older than you. And I don't know why that kind of stuck with me, but now when I look at, successful CEOs and founders and all these people, like, wow, they've achieved so much. And then sometimes I think I forget that, I'm only 22, and, there's so many more years ahead of me, hopefully. And that, it's just a time thing, and you just got to be a bit more sort of, um, patient, I suppose.
I love that. Such good reflections. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming on to this podcast and chatting to us. It's been really fruitful. And yeah, we're very excited to see your journeys and how they pan out. Thank you so much.
Thank you to you guys. It's been a wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed it.
I really, really appreciated you guys reaching out, and I loved this conversation too. Please, in future, contact us whenever you need. I really wish you all the best with More Than Medics.
Oh, thank you.
Likewise.